Hey, what's up, guys? My name's Saj with the Pretty Boy Offense, and today I'm going to be going down my Week 13 love and hate games for Survivor of the 13th week of the NFL season. Really interesting week. There's a lot of heavy favorites this week when it comes to games. So I'm going to try and stay away from the Texans Colts game and the Rams Jaguars games. If you guys have those teams saved up, we're at the end of the season now, so start using those big teams out with those guaranteed wins. You're going to start noticing with some of the love and hate games this week that they're going to be closer calls, but you really shouldn't have to be taking these. If you got to this point in the season and you've been taking some of the advice I've been given, you've been saving those better teams up for these moments. But as we move on, I think we've got some pretty good love and hate games for some teams that you might not have thought about this week. Maybe if you need to squeak out one or two more weeks of getting some competitive relevance out of the top teams. And I think we have a really good list here. So to start, we'll start with the hate games because I think the hate games are more interesting. The ways you can lose and these games are a bit more apparent, I think. And the first game is Washington football team versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Now the Raiders have a couple of injury issues as well, on top of just being relatively depleted as a roster. It kind of feels like the NFL is starting to get up to speed in terms of Max Crosby, so his disruption's kind of going back a bit. Teams have learned that you just need to run on the Raiders if you want to kind of take him out of the equation. Still having a great season, but the last few games has tapered off a bit. And the Washington football team, well, Taylor Heineke's a quarterback. As much as I am critical of him, he's capable of taking those running lanes from the offensive line that they give him, or just in scramble plays when plays break down. I think Washington is fully capable of beating the Raiders, but then also, if Derek Carr is able to, click with Moreau and some of the other fill-in replacements that they have on that team right now, Washington's just a bad football team as well. So it's just you're trying to discern between, which of these two bad teams is who's the more bad team, and it gets to a point where one mistake usually changes these games over, and when two teams are so prone to mistakes, you don't want to touch that game at all. So stay away from the Washington football team versus the Raiders. Yeah, that's one of my hate games. Next hate game, Seahawks versus 49ers. So again, we just have two teams on different trajectories right now. The Seahawks are trying to figure it out with Russell Wilson. I think he got rushed back a bit too quick from his finger injury, and we've noticed that in the last two games. They just haven't been up to Russell Wilson's standards. He's making bad decisions, throwing interceptions when he has open wide receivers in the end zone and stuff like that. And then we start thinking about the headlines that the Seahawks had where maybe Wilson wants to get out, maybe Pete Carroll's on his last year. So this kind of stuff, you want to stay away from teams with kind of that bad, headspace around them. The locker room mentality is such a big part of how NFL teams play. This is such a rhythm game, and things like that, the personal issues can really get in the way of a football team's rhythm, especially when those issues are involved with your quarterback, the guy who touches the ball every single play. But the reason we hate this game is because when Russell Wilson does get healthy and he does what he's capable of, he has Tyler Lockett, he has DK Metcalf, and I guess he's got Adrian Peterson now too, which for whatever that's worth is something. But they're going up against a 49ers team who's being productive, they're being consistent, they're being efficient with the ball. Garoppolo's playing great or very good for what he's being asked to do. He's not lighting the world on fire, but he's doing enough for this team to win games. The defense is stepping up a bit more as well with every game. It's just the wild card of Russell Wilson. Once he's back healthy, once his finger's fully healthy, once he can throw the ball better, you'd expect this to be a pretty close game. I consider both these teams relatively close. I think the 49ers roster is much better than the Seahawks, but when you have a game-making quarterback, playmaking quarterback like Russell Wilson, anything's possible. So similar to that Washington Las Vegas game that I have on this hate list, it's going to be one of those games where it's which team makes the least amount of mistakes, and both these teams are prone to making mistakes, especially with the 49ers trying to find a new way to feed the ball or get the ball down the field. With Deebo Samuel being injured for a couple weeks now, he's going to be missing some time. So, the guy that seemed stranded on that team, Brandon Ayuk, is going to have to become relevant. They have to figure out their running back rotation, which I don't think anybody can, even within that organization now, can figure out that running back rotation. But yeah, Seahawks 49ers, hate that game this week, especially when it's a division matchup as well, because anything can happen in a division matchup. And then the last game I hate, this one might be a surprise to you guys, because I do talk about how much I think the Steelers are a bad team, but I think the Steelers are in a position to give the Ravens a bit of a run for their money. I love the Ravens, but Lamar Jackson's passer rating and just being a good quarterback recently, he's been able to survive because of his athleticism, but his passing just hasn't been that great. When you go up against Mike Tomlin, who's kind of got a Bill Belichickian factor about him, in which he can coach good defense, the defensive line's playing well, and it might be enough to just corral Lamar Jackson. And when he's not getting those big plays to like save games and stuff like that, you're just seeing that the injuries are kind of catching up to the Ravens, and you don't want to be involved with a team like the Ravens. There's so much institutionalized trends or like tactics, and just thinking the Ravens are a good team, and they are, and they're playing sometimes good football. Sometimes Lamar Jackson looks like an MVP candidate. Sometimes he looks like a man on a team that's just depleted of talent. And I think when you run into a team like the Steelers, who's capable of exploiting those holes that you have on your roster, it's just going to be a bad situation. But then also, what are the Steelers this year? They've also been a coin flip team too. So with both those aspects talked about, and then much like the Seahawks 49ers division game, you don't really want to bet on that. It's any dog can have this day, and this could easily be a Steelers win over the Ravens. So those are the 3 games I want to stay away from. And then some of the love games, like I said, a lot of big love games for me this week. There's a lot of big heavy matchups. If Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins are healthy for the Cardinals over the Bears is a great one to pick as well. Like I talked about off the top, Indy and Houston, so you go Indy and stuff like that. Rams, Jaguars, a lot of great matchups. But some other ones that if you guys are on the fence about, maybe say, like if you want to save, like I said, you have the Dolphins versus Giants, and right now Daniel Jones is questionable for this game. I would love the Dolphins over the Giants. Like I kind of always talk about the roster is more complete roster right now, just playing a bit better. Tua, maybe there's questions about, is he the quarterback of the future for Miami? Well, until a better option shows up, Tua's a fine quarterback, and similar to Jimmy Garoppolo, he's been very accurate with the football the last few games. He's been doing what he's required the last few games, and that's what the Miami Dolphins need him to be. So, I like Tua and the Dolphins to go against this Giants defense, and then I also like the Giants offense not being able to move the ball. As much as I love Saquon Barkley as an electric talent in this league, he just hasn't been there this year, whether that's injury or he's just a little slow just coming back from these injuries as well. He may be healthy, but he's just like game fitness a little off. It just hasn't been there. So the Giants are kind of sitting on an egg of a season, not really doing much with it. So love the Dolphins over the Giants. Next game, 2 bad teams, 2 of the worst teams in the league, but one of these teams, even though they're so bad, are finding their groove and becoming more productive, and that's the Eagles over the Giants. So yes, I do love taking the Eagles over, not the Giants, the Jets, another New York team, sorry. Yeah, I've always talked about how much I don't like Jalen Hurts as like a franchise quarterback, and I think their offensive philosophy is just obviously skewed to like what they have available to them and what they're capable of doing with their quarterback and their weapons. But at least it's an identity, and at least it's consistent, and we know that they're just going to run on the Jets, and I think the Jets are just going to let them run on them. Jets haven't been able to stop anybody, whether it's in the air or on the ground. And when we start talking about Zach Wilson, we're talking about a quarterback that, yes, is capable of making those fun plays, but when you're going to be going against a team like the Eagles, that's just going to eat up so much clock and be as consistent as they are, even though they are bad, their offense is consistent. Yeah, I'll take the Eagles over the Jets, because you're going to force Zach Wilson into situations where he has to make plays with a minimal clock, and that's where mistakes happen, and that's how the Jets always lose. So, Eagles over Jets. Never thought I'd think the Eagles were a safe bet, but here we are. So, the last game I love, Vikings over Lions. Good team, bad team. This is a Vikings team that's kind of fighting for their playoff lives. If they're going to make it count, you got to start winning these games that they're fully capable of losing, because as you guys know, I talk about how the Vikings play down or play up to their opponent. So it's the worst thing for Survivor. I think this is the closest thing you can get to a slam dunk with the Vikings. I know they burned us like early in the year with some of these games, but if you're going to win a tight one against a division opponent, it's going to end up being the Lions. That's kind of the hardest one to shit away. So yeah, I go Vikings against the Lions. And, what is there to say about the Lions? They haven't really bucked any trends. They're the same team they were at the beginning. They're inept on offense. They kind of have no identity. And it's not to the fault of the coaches or the players. It's just a fault of the state of the franchise right now. They're rebuilding. So, take the year on the chin. Just take it. And then next year, start, really putting your plan in process. But, yeah, so just to go over it again, guys. Washington over Raiders, hate. Steelers over Ravens, hate. Seahawks over 49ers, hate it. Games I love, though, Dolphins to beat the Giants, Eagles to beat the Jets, and the Vikings to beat the Lions. Sorry about my video uploads this week, guys. I'm making sure I get this one out for you because I know a lot of you guys like to hear some of this stuff. So yeah, best of luck this week. Coming up to the end of the season, so these videos we're going to get easier and easier because hopefully we have these good teams held out and we can just pick. But yeah, I'll keep diving into some of these more obscure picks that you could do for love and hate. Good luck, guys. See ya.